What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Wrestling Junkies podcast, a special edition of the Wrestling Junkies podcast. I'm Mr. Cincinnati. As always, I am joined by the podcast dad himself, Chris Hoops. Choops, how we doing, buddy?
Fantastic. It's that time again. We get to do what we love. We're interviewing an actual wrestler, and I am so excited. Without further ado, let's get to it.
Absolutely, yes. He has wrestled for Beyond and Wrestling Open. Everybody, please welcome the good doctor, Landon Hale, DC. Landon, thanks for joining us.
Doing
how you doing,
good,
man?
guys. How y'all doing?
Can't complain.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, we greatly appreciate you joining us. Like Chris said, this is one of the favorite parts of our job here is getting to talk to wrestlers across the country and just getting to know them, getting to know what makes them tick, and again, just having great conversation about one of the best businesses that has ever existed. So let's get right into it. We believe here at the Wrestling Junkies podcast, wrestlers are superheroes, and every superhero has that origin story. So Landon, if you could tell us some of your earliest memories of professional wrestling.
So it started when I was about 5 years old. So I guess I was more of a fan of WCW versus like WWF. And so I grew up watching it with my dad, and that was like one of the biggest memories, which unfortunately he passed away when I was 7. So I only had like a couple of years, spending that much time with him. But I was a fan of like the luchador and the luchadors and the high flyers. So I was a huge fan of Rey Mysterio growing up. That's my favorite wrestler to this day. I grew up watching like Juventud Guerrera, Psychosis, Chris Jericho, Dean Malenko, you name it, all the cruiserweights. And so that was sort of like my biggest memory was watching a lot of the high flyers when I was little. And so I had this stuffed Kevin Nash doll that my dad bought me when I was 5, and I would literally beat the crap out of it every single chance that I get. So I was born for wrestling. So I knew right then and there that I was ready for this.
I think we all had something like that growing up, right? We always had something to beat up, whether it was a stuffed animal or something like that.
1,000%.
Yeah. So saying you were born for it, kind of a different route. You are a professional chiropractor. So which came first, wrestling or chiropractor studies?
So funny enough, it actually happened to be wrestling, but it kind of happened at the same time, if that makes sense. So pretty much I started wrestling at the age of 24. So it happened in July. I started taking my first bumps in July, and I had my first show in August. And so right there, a couple of months later, after having a few shows in Kentucky, that's where I'm from, that's when I moved down to Georgia for chiropractic school. So I guess you could say wrestling came first before the chiropractic studies.
Okay. How do you time manage that? Like how are you doing both at the same time?
Your guess is as good as mine, brother. No, it was so when I first started off with wrestling, I wrestled under a guy named Mike Sampson. I trained under a guy named Mike Sampson, and he was more so of a jobber back in the old school WWF days. And he taught me the bread and butter, like the basics of everything. So I only had maybe like 2 or 3 matches before moving down to Georgia, and then I was trained under Robert Gibson. And so from October to about December or January, I got my feet wet with him because he wanted me to like break down my basics and just kind of rebuild it to the way that he wanted it. And so once I got on my first show, I was able to understand what it was like going through chiropractic school. And I could say, okay, I could easily juggle both of these, in which, I mean, I was more of the local scene in Georgia. So I was going to like Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee. So I stayed local for the most part because of classes the following day, or the following like couple of days. So that's what kind of kept me going was, okay, I'm able to time manage that. So it worked out well. And then with me being a chiropractor right now, I'm able to manage my schedule from working Monday through Thursday as a chiropractor. And then I easily transition from chiropractor all the way to going to Wrestling Open on Thursday nights. And it's about a 25-30 minute drive from my office, wrestle. And then it's an easy segue into wrestling. So it kind of works out really well.
No, I know Eric's got another question, but real quick, like, do you change out of your lab coat before you get there, or do you like driving with the lab coat on?
So I literally drive there in my actual chiropractic stuff. So it's like, button up shirt, pants.
That's great.
I literally go in, and then after that, I literally just change, and I'm like, I'm from chiropractor to wrestler. So it's a really cool transition.
That's awesome.
Nice. It's actually perfect that you have segued into that. I mean, we physical of just the driving from, doing chiropractic work to driving to the arena. But like, let's talk about the mental. What do you do to kind of get yourself hyped up after you've had a long week of work? What is it for you that flips that switch and gets you ready to go in the ring?
It's, to be honest, and like usually a lot of people, they listen to music, they usually listen to like motivational speeches or just something like that. For me, it's just the love and adrenaline for it in itself. Like I don't listen to any type of music. The only thing that I do before going out is I pray and just make sure that everything's good. And then just kind of like build up the adrenaline and just kind of get that going, because once the music hits, that's when that switch flips, and so that's when I'm ready to rock and roll. So I don't think it's so much of like a routine before going out. I think besides the prayer, I think I just kind of just try to mellow out, just gather all
Yeah.
my thoughts, making sure everything's in swing of things, and so right before I go out, that's when I can be full force with the good doctor.
Okay.
Nice.
So you're 1 year out of wrist surgery. What was the biggest thing you learned about yourself, like during that rehab process?
So funny enough, tomorrow actually makes exactly 1 year of my
Okay.
wrist surgery, and
Wow.
so I'll
Okay.
put a little
Yeah.
thing right there. But yeah,
Yeah.
so pretty much, I don't know, just time is precious, and there's a lot of things that I'm a firm believer in God. Whatever lens you look through, but I believe that things work out the way that it should or intend to, and it may not be in your court, but it could be in the universe. So when I had that injury, I was like, okay, like I'm going to be out for a while. I'm just thinking negatively, but I'm also thinking positive impacts of what I could do to help not just myself, for my mental being, but also help myself like with growing the office that I'm working at right now, or being able to promote myself a little bit better when it comes to my wrestling, because I transitioned. I nicknamed myself, or I got the nickname the Good Doctor from a guy by the name of Scott Hensley, who runs the Scenic City Invitational, the big tournament in the Southeast that I was a part of this year. And he was telling me that, it's the good doctor, it kind of resembles who you are, a chiropractor, you're a good guy, good doctor, that meshes well. And so when I was going through that type of like moniker, then I can easily like flip the switch and be like, okay, kind of come up with creative ideas to, mesh what like the moniker with the gimmicks, so that way it could easily translate once I came back from injury, and it seems like it's going really well. So there's a lot of things that I discovered about myself, and one of the things is, moving transitions, being able to stay at home with the wife, and just spending more time with her, because once I hit the roads, it's, you're not going to get a lot of that time back. So I'm just really thankful for the time that I did when I was out.
That's
see,
awesome.
Eric,
Yeah.
it's okay to be married. It's all right.
It's okay, brother.
I'm not. Hey, I've never said that. Never said that it isn't. I just, live a very different life. Right
The
now.
kids are the hard part. That's the real tough part.
Oh man.
So, having come off of this year and finally feeling back to 100%. Any advice for your fellow wrestlers out there as a chiropractor? What can they do that they may not be thinking of to take care of their bodies between shows?
Go see a chiropractor. That's an obvious question, or that's an obvious answer for me. But it's definitely good to make sure that your body is in the best alignment. And so what I usually tell people is, when you get your spine in the best alignment, so I'll give you like a little education as simple as it can be. So you have the brain that controls the nerves that go throughout the spine. And so the nerves go to every single muscle and every single organ in the body. So if there's pinching of a nerve and it's not giving that proper flow to a muscle or to an organ, it's dysfunction of that muscle or that organ. So it's always good to make sure that you get your body in the best alignment possible. Definitely do proper warm-ups. Definitely do a lot of good stretches and exercises to help build the body up, and then be able to properly cool down and make sure you take care of yourself nutritionally. I see a lot of the times, like I met him not too long ago, Crowbar, which, outside of that, he's also a physical therapist. And, I see him on Twitter or X a lot when it talks about, spots that people do or exercises that you should or should not do. And so, like, I've watched a lot of his stuff, and, sometimes chiropractic and PT can kind of go hand in hand depending on the situation, but it's always good to, get some type of good advice from people that's going to lead you in the right direction with your body later. So definitely taking care of your body, whether it's from a massage, whether it's going to see a chiropractor, just taking care of your body in the gym, nutritionally, and obviously emotionally and physically, mentally, just making sure everything's in check before anyone else. Because people nowadays with wrestlers, they want to wrestle every single weekend, and I get it. It's on the grind, but it's also good to make sure you get your physical and mental check in order. So that's always good advice, I guess.
What's your favorite like cool down routine?
Cool down routine. I've been getting in a better habit of it, but I would drink a protein shake right after my match because it's a lot of physical. It's a lot of physical situations, physical labor. Just making sure, because you're in there for so many minutes, you know, wrestling, picking up people, running. So I got to make sure that I'm in the best shape possible with that. And then I just cool down with slow stretches. So there's like dynamic stretches where people like warm up their body, go through the motions. And then you have like static stretches where people just sit down and then they just do like holds for so many seconds of like each body part, just so that way that it prevents pooling in the blood, and so that way it prevents, you know, anything from happening, like worsening of injuries and so on and so forth. So that's something that I try to do. And funny enough for me is that when my injury happened last year, I was doing heavy hang cleans, and this was like a couple of days before, or maybe it was like 2 or 3 days before my match that I had. When I was doing hang cleans, they were pretty heavy, and I guess it slid under the bar, so it kind of like jerked on my wrist, and so that added extra pressure to what it was. Then a few days later, I did a frog splash off the top rope at Fight Life in a triple threat match. And then rather than landing on my forearms, landed on an outstretched hand. And so that's where it ended up fracturing one of the bones in my wrist. So it's always good to make sure that you're preventative from injuries and so on and so forth.
I feel like I need to be taking notes. I gotta start stretching after the pod. Yeah. We're gonna go totally different down a different path here. Any memorable fan interactions that you've had, or kind of what have you had a favorite fan interaction so far?
Favorite fan interaction, I believe so. 2006. So there's they just built in 2006. I was probably in 6th grade going into 7th grade. They had a like an expo center or an arena that they just built in my hometown of Pikeville, and it's a small town, but it's what we would consider a city, so it's nothing too crazy. And then WWE SmackDown just had their first ever live show, and this was when or in Pikeville, and this was when Rey Mysterio was heavyweight champion. Got to meet him, over the moon. I was so excited. Another cool moment too. So my dad's favorite wrestler was Kevin Nash, and that's the reason why I brought up the Kevin Nash doll. A cool moment was we were in Daytona Beach the next year, and it was like me, my mom, and one of her friends, and we just randomly went to an Outback Steakhouse. And I think this was at the time that he was with TNA. He just happened to show up there randomly, just this big 7-foot shadow just walking through. An hour later, he's talking to his buddies, and then my mom saw it. And then as he walked around, luckily he came around to our area, and then mom stuck out her hand and was like, "Hey, are you Kevin Nash?" Got a picture with him. And then 4 days later, we went to Clearwater, and someone was like, "Oh yeah, Hulk Hogan's out on his jet ski," and I got to meet him. And so I swam out a little bit, and I shook his hand, and he said, "Don't get you by the sharks, brother." And so I was like, I was pretty cool being in like middle school, just thinking like, "Oh, he called me brother." That's pretty cool. But yeah, those were like a few of the cooler interactions that I've had.
Nice.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Love that. As we kind of, bring the interview to a close, this is something we like to do on our show is, just because social media helps expose us to wrestlers, and, we're fortunate enough to see people on X or, Instagram that, we want to interact with and hopefully have on the show. But also just want to learn more about and see, what people are doing in the world of indie wrestling right now. So, we're going to give you an opportunity to spotlight anybody that you've really, gotten a chance to either work with in the ring, or somebody that you haven't yet, but have seen their work and you're just like, oh my gosh, this person is phenomenal.
Yeah. So I've had wonderful opportunities. I've had an opportunity to work with Max Castro last year at Wrestling Open. It was like one of the July shows, and this is when he was doing his $10,000 briefcase challenge. Like if you could beat him in less than 10 minutes, you get $10,000. It was a great experience working with him. I had a chance to work with Rhino in a 6-man tag in Georgia. This was a couple of years ago. One of the sweetest guys that you will ever meet. He was one of those humble dudes that you could ever meet. You wouldn't expect him to have, again, with his type of caliber and his history of, ECW and what he's been doing right now. One of the nicest guys that you could ever talk to. And he would answer anything. And then just being in the ring with just a few others in the past, that's been local on the indie. So TJ Crawford, I had the chance to wrestle him, and I'm wrestling him this Friday. But, He's great talent. I had the chance to work at Daikaiju Pro, and that was the wrestling show that happened earlier this month. And I wrestled Monomoth from Thailand, and just wrestling someone out of the country was just an amazing experience with language barrier, making sure that, the match was, set, and it happened to be one of my favorite matches of this year and probably of my career. And so now going into matches I'd like to have, obviously, like, we all have our big dream opponents that we'd like to have that's, on TV. But when it comes to, like, independent level, love my buddy Alec Price. He's been doing great things. So hopefully I can have a match with him. Jordan Oliver for sure. Desmond Cole, he's been doing great. And then I'd like to work something with I'd like to be able to wrestle Channing Thomas. Like, I know that he's been doing really good. So hopefully that there's something out there for him. But any competition at all, no matter who it is, I'm down for anybody.
Okay. Some names to keep an eye out, or names to keep an eye out for. So as we're closing the end of this year, what are you looking forward to next year? What excites you about next year? What's on the docket in 2024 for Landon Hale? Sorry.
So for me, that's good. So for me, it's pretty much international travel. I just got my passport, which is nice.
Nice.
Definitely ready.
Nice.
I believe I may have like 1 or 2 international bookings lined up, but I'm not going to say anything until it gets announced. But I believe that this is going to help me get me better exposure with the wrestling. 2024, definitely. I'd like to go out to the West Coast. I think that would be an awesome place to wrestle. And just debuting at different places here. I know that that I just debuted for Beyond a couple of weeks ago. I'd like to do more things with Beyond. And I know ETU has been giving me a great opportunity, and I like to run a little bit with them. I know I'm going back down to Action. I'd like to be back in the Scenic City Invitational, because where I was runner-up last year, I feel like, in the words of Cody Rhodes, I got to finish the story. So now I just got to go down there and prove that I can hang with the best of them. So those are just like a few of my little takeaways for next year for sure.
Okay.
Love that. So this weekend, you've got a pretty big opportunity coming up. This is a triple threat match with Northern Federation of Wrestling, taking on TJ Crawford and Marcus Mathers, no more contendership for their world title. Any final words for your opponents before this weekend?
I know Marcus and TJ, they're both really good. TJ, you suck. But they're going to be it's going to be a great competition. It's going to be a great battle. I know it's a 3-way dance. It may be elimination from the last time that was spoken to, but for those guys, I may not have as much experience as they do when it comes to, like, it may be in ring or year wise, but I do have a lot of knowledge on the spine, so they just got to watch their back.
Nice. That's a great line. I love that.
Watch your back. That's what I say.
That's awesome. Where can we find you on social media?
Social media, I do have, and I try to explain this as best as I can, because I have a lot of fans that try to follow me on Facebook, because my real name and my wrestling name, they're the same. Mm-hmm. So some people, they try to add me as a friend on Facebook, but I also have a fan page. So if you wouldn't mind following the fan page, that would be awesome. It's not me being an ass. It's just me being realistic with my real life versus wrestling life. If you can just follow the wrestling, that would be great. Instagram, Landon Hale 3. On Twitter or X at HaleYeah3. You can catch a lot of my videos on YouTube if you just type in Landon Hale. And then you can also check out my merchandise. I sell on Pro Wrestling Tees. It's the Good Doctor shirts. And so it's prowrestlingtees.com/Landon Hale. So there you go.
Awesome.
Cincinnati. Well, Landon, as always, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, we love talking to wrestlers. We would love to have you back on. Best of luck to you this weekend and everything you do in 2024. Thank you guys for watching. This has been a special edition of the Wrestling Junkies podcast. For the podcast Dad, I'm Mr. Cincinnati, and we'll talk to you guys soon.